Hi everyone. I got back today from Michigan. I went up to the North American Model Engineering Society show up in Wyandotte, and I thought you guys might like to see the tool haul that I got while I was up there. So give me a second to adjust the camera and I'll show off all my goods. Here's all the stuff I could fit on camera pretty easily, and let's go through it. I'll start off with small stuff. First, I got myself a South Bend lathe shirt. This was $15 from one of the vendors. And I don't own a South Bend lathe, but I've run them before, and I respect them, of course. And plus, now I've got another t-shirt, and I don't have to do laundry for one more day, which over the lifetime of this shirt, that's going to be a great return on investment. Next up, I got a whole bunch of files. They had one vendor that was selling Riffler files like this. These were 4 for $10, and I got a nice selection. I also found a new old stock box of Nicholson's files, and I've got a dozen of them. They're these little, maybe around 1/8 inch or 3mm diameter round files. I didn't need them for anything in particular, but they were $10 for a box of 12, and I figured that's really not too bad. And it's pretty much a lifetime supply for me. This one was a bit of an impulse purchase. It's a little jeweler's anvil, and they had a few different varieties, some like nickel plated and really cheap looking. And this one caught my eye because it's actually nicely machined, and you can tell it's heat treated. It's dark where it hasn't been machined. So it's a really nice surface finish, and there's a little hole there for punching pins out. There's also a threaded hole on the bottom for mounting it to your bench, so that's pretty slick. And you have a flat horn and a round horn. So I think this is going to be pretty handy for some of the work that I do. This was also a bit of an impulse purchase. There's a company called Tech Bond out there, and these are cyanoacrylate glues, CA glues, basically super glue. He had a demo going where he was just gluing all sorts of stuff that normally can't be glued together. So sometimes with just the glue, and then this is an activator or an accelerator, so he would spray this on there and put the two pieces together, and they were stuck pretty much instantly. One of the more impressive demos that he did while he was there was glue various pieces of plastic together as well as pieces of metal to Teflon, which of course Teflon doesn't want to stick to anything. This is something that I've always kind of lusted after. One of my co-workers has a set of these. These are indicator tips from Starrett. And you unscrew the tip on your regular dial indicator, and then you can screw these on. And the Starrett set is super, super nice, but brand new, it's about $120. So I could never really bring myself to actually buy it. But I got this for $45, so I was pretty chuffed about that price. And one of my favorite tips on here are these wide flat ones. Let's see if you can see that a little better here. These are fantastic for dialing things in with a 4-jaw chuck, because the center height of your piece doesn't really matter. You can have your indicator on there, and even as it's wobbling around like this, it's still maintaining contact with this wide flat tip, and it makes it really easy to dial something in very quickly with the 4-jaw. You've also got this long narrow tip, these wide rounded ones that are great for dialing parts in. You've got a couple of different pointy tips, a long point and a stubbier point, a smaller flat. You've got some of these long tips that have rounded ends, a tiny little ball. I mean, there's all sorts of tips on there for all sorts of different work, and like I said, they're incredibly well made. Nice surface finishes on them, and they're fantastic accessories. Can't wait to use these. I got these clamps, 4 for $10 here, and this is something, I mean, it looks like a step clamp, and people might be wondering why I wanted to spend money on a step clamp, but these are a little bit different. These you would actually bolt directly down to the table, and when you loosen up this screw, these halves are free to slide apart and back. But when you tighten them up, they're actually forced forward and down by the wedges that are on the inside of this clamp. So you can see as you tighten the piece up, it pushes inward and that way down towards the table. So what you can do is you can put your part up against a solid stop, either a piece of stock or an angle plate, something like that, maybe something on your fixture. And then you tighten up these clamps on one side, and they kind of work like the Mighty Bite clamps, but a little beefier. And you would actually put them against your part while they're spread apart. So when you tighten up the clamp, it pushes in and down and tightens it securely downwards towards the table or down to your fixture. I got this small collet chuck. This is a 5/8 shank collet chuck. It's actually from Erickson Tool, and it came with 4 collets. These are DA200 collets, and the DA is double angle. So when you tighten this up, it's actually quite loose in there, but it centers using the angle on one side of the collet, and then when you tighten the nut, it squeezes them down from both sides and gives you a nice secure grip on your tool, and it squeezes down by quite a lot actually. And what these are really nice for is when you need just a little bit of extra reach on your spindle, or if your spindle is too big to fit where it needs to be, so you need a little bit of clearance. So you can have this held in a regular collet and extending out a little bit. They make these in different lengths. This one's actually pretty short, but sometimes, you know, you'll see them that are about maybe twice as long as this. Sometimes with a smaller nut. They have different size DA collets, so there's DA100, DA200, so on and so forth. And they're really, really great for giving you just a little bit of extra reach and a little clearance. There's my names button, by the way. This is how you got into the place. $10 to get in. If you've never been to the NAMES Expo, go check it out. It's every April in Wyandotte, Michigan, and it's a really fantastic show. Lots of small engines and tons of vendors. Now, this is a small comparator stand that I got, and I got this for $20. It comes with a Federal indicator. The indicator's a little on the gummy side, but it seems to have freed up a bit after working it back and forth, and it still repeats. I have a video on comparator stands. Basically, these would be used for checking parts, multiple parts of the same length, and you would put a gauge block under there, zero your indicator, and then you would use your comparator stand to compare each part to that gauge block to see if it's the correct length. Now this is obviously shop made, and it doesn't have a maker's mark that I've seen, but I imagine some tool maker made it someplace, and or might have been an apprentice project, who knows. But it's got a real nice little indicator on there, and it's a little bit smaller than the granite comparator stand that I have, so it's a little easier to move around. Now this is one that I am really, really excited about. This is a 10th set boring head. If you've never used one of these, they're pretty great. You know, you've got your Criterion boring heads that you need a bunch of wrenches in order to use. This one though is just a ring. This knurled ring allows you to change the offset on the boring head, so you don't need tools. There's a little locking screw right here, and then you turn this ring in order to adjust the diameter of your boring head. And it reads on the diameter, so as you go, you're just reading the degree markings here. And they call it a 10th set because you have this vernier scale here, or vernier scale. I keep getting called out for saying vernier. But this scale allows you to get down to 10/1000ths of an inch. Probably, I don't look like you can see that on camera. Maybe you can. But you would read it just like the vernier scale on a micrometer. Now it holds the boring bar there or from the side, and you just have a very limited throw there, but it's perfect for small holes and tight tolerance work. I have wanted one of these for a really, really long time, so I'm glad to have one. Now the only issue with this is this shank. It's got a 1-inch shank right now. I'm going to see if I can take that off and replace it with an R8 shank that'll fit into my Bridgeport, or at least a straight shank that will fit in one of my collets, because they don't make R8 collets to 1 inch. I could conceivably put it in a 1-inch end mill holder, but that's not ideal. I mean, that would add probably that much length to it, and between the length of the end mill holder, the length of this, and the length of the boring bar, that would eat up the work envelope on my machine really quickly, and I don't want to do that. an end mill holder just really wouldn't be ideal to hold this as far as rigidity goes. I mean, that's just a lot of stick out from the spindle. Now, I know you guys probably have been eyeing this the whole time, and you almost certainly know what it is. I got myself a Starrett Master Precision level, and I've also wanted one of these for a long time. They had quite a lot of them for sale at the show, and the vendor in particular that had this was selling 5 of them for $200 each. So I paid him my $200 because that was beating all the other vendors at the show, and he let me pick out which of the 5 that I thought was in the best shape. So I got one that had a calibration sticker from 1990. I'm still going to go ahead and maybe get this thing checked out professionally just to make sure, because I mean, that was close to 30 years ago now, so I want to make sure that it's actually in decent shape. Now, if you aren't familiar with Master Precision levels, these are the last word in leveling your equipment. So if you were going to level your lathe and check for bed twist, you would start out with a less sensitive level, especially if it's a new installation. You would put a machinist level that's graduated in 5/1000ths per foot, and get it level that way. And then you would switch to one of these guys. Each of the graduations that you can see on the vial there is 0.5/1000th per foot out of level. So this is incredibly sensitive, and usually when you're leveling a lathe, if you were to take just a little bit of a twist on one of the leveling bolts, this thing jumps like crazy. So you've got to be pretty ginger with that. And also, while I was up there, I took the opportunity to go to the wholesale tool store up in Warren, Michigan. It was a little bit of a drive, maybe a half an hour away from where I was staying, but I love going to that store. I used to love going to the one that they had in Indianapolis, but they closed that one a few years ago. Now, if you've never been there, they've got quite a lot of industrial supply and abrasives and cutting tools and things like that. You can browse through all the machinery they have and all through their bins, and it's a great place to kill an hour. So what I got there, and this was all relatively cheap stuff, I got some of these little picks. I mean, they look like dental picks, but they specifically say for hardware use only. Don't put these in your teeth. So I got a couple of different shapes of these, and these are great for picking out O-rings or hydraulic seals or something like that. Really picking anything out of any particular spot that you need to get it out of. So I got a couple of different shapes, and I probably should have gotten more. These things were only $2.50 each. This one actually says wax carver too, so if you're doing jewelry work, some lost wax casting, you can actually use these to carve the wax. I got this nice little Nicholson half-round file. It's got teeth on the flat side as well as the round side. This is actually made in Canada, not in Mexico like the ones that are out there now. So I don't know if this is new old stock or if they're making them in Canada as well. And then I got myself a little file handle to go with it. I got these die sticks. These are $1.25 each, and these are basically sharpening stones. You can use them for honing off nicks and deburring edges, polishing things, that sort of thing. So I got a coarse stone and a fine stone. You can really never have too many stones laying around. Now, the thing I love about the wholesale tool store is they have these bins with all sorts of surplus tooling in there. And I found some of the best stuff in there. In this case, I got 4 brand spanking new carbide cutters, brazed carbide tools, made in the US. These are AR-64s. I'm guessing that's an inch by 3/4 on the shank. Do I need them? Not particularly, but they're still covered in the shipping wax, and I just couldn't let them sit there. I'm going to find a use for them sometime. I'll probably have to mill the shanks down so that they'll actually fit in my tool holders, but I'm definitely going to utilize those bad boys. And then they also had a little taper shank drill in there. They had a few others, but they weren't in that great a shape. They were all cut off or snapped off pretty short. But this one was there, and it's an 11.5 millimeter drill, which is pretty much exactly 29/64. So that's the tap drill size for a 1/2 inch 20 bolt. This has got a Morse 1 taper, and I've got some adapter sleeves for that, so that shouldn't be a problem. I got the cutters and the drill bit for 20 bucks, so that's really not too bad. I also had a large barrel of 01 drill rod in all sorts of different sizes, and they were selling that for 50% off because it was rusty. So I got it for dealer cost basically, and actually they went ahead and knocked off an additional 10%. So this is a 13/16 drill rod, and I got it for $17.24. I've got a project in mind that needs a piece of drill rod just about this size. That barrel had everything from 1/8 inch drill rod all the way up to 2-inch in it, and I was really tempted to get some of that 2-inch because I've got a blacksmith friend that would definitely want to use that, but that was going to be about $80, and I didn't want to spend quite that much. Anyway, that's about all I've got for this video. Thanks for coming along and letting me show off all my goodies to you. If you haven't already, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button down below. And as always, thanks for watching.